All right, ready to dive back into the Old Testament?
Always. What do we have today?
Well, today's deep dive takes us back to ancient Israel, into the story of King David. Cracking open the book of First Chronicles, specifically chapters 16 through 18,
Chronicles, love it.
to uncover how faith, power, and legacy, well, intertwine, I guess.
You're in for a treat.
Yeah.
Chronicles offers a unique perspective, almost like um, peering through a lens, crafted by the priests who meticulously preserve these accounts.
We start in chapter 16, and there's this palpable air of celebration. David has brought the Ark of the Covenant, that sacred symbol of God's presence, to Jerusalem, but instead of housing it in a magnificent temple, he places it in a tent. This seemingly humble choice, well, it makes you wonder about the message being conveyed.
Right? It's a detail that has sparked debate for centuries. It's important to note that for the Israelites, the presence of the ark wasn't about outward grandeur, but about God being at the heart of, well, their lives, their nation. The Kent, a temporary structure perhaps, underscores that God's ultimate dwelling isn't confined to bricks and mortar.
So not just about the building.
No. David's focus isn't on some big construction project, but on establishing a system of worship, with the Levites, the priestly tribe, and musicians meticulously organized.
So he's prioritizing devotion and reverence over an elaborate building.
Exactly.
And that takes us to this incredible psalm of thanksgiving in verses 8 through 36, overflowing with raw emotion and profound theological ideas. What are the key takeaways that resonate with you in this song?
It's like a symphony of praise and reflection. The psalmist begins by recounting God's faithfulness to the covenant, that sacred promise he made with Abraham and his descendants. Imagine the impact of hearing these ancient words, a reminder of God's enduring faithfulness.
Wow.
This remembrance, though, it isn't just about the past. It fuels their present and future. It underscores the importance of celebrating and remembering God's actions, keeping those stories alive for each generation. But what makes this psalm particularly powerful is this: the bold declaration of God's reign extending beyond Israel, encompassing all nations.
That universal scope. Yeah, it's an important thread woven throughout the Old Testament, and it sets the stage for the events about to unfold. This joyous occasion isn't just a standalone celebration. It foreshadows a pivotal moment in David's life, one that will have lasting consequences. Okay, so we're moving on to chapter 17 now, where we find David kind of contemplating this disparity, I guess, between his own comfortable circumstances and the simple tent that's housing the ark.
Yeah.
He's residing in a cedar palace, yet the symbol of God's presence isn't exactly sharing in that splendor.
It's an interesting moment in the narrative, that's for sure. David recognizes a kind of imbalance, an imbalance that sparks his desire to build a permanent temple for God.
It seems like a pretty logical next step. I mean, he wants to honor God in a really tangible way, but this is where the story takes, well, I guess an unexpected turn, right?
Right. God speaks to the prophet Nathan,
Uh-huh.
and Nathan has to relay a message that I think probably surprises David, and maybe even surprises us when we read it. God makes it clear that David is not the one to build a lasting temple.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. That particular honor, God says, is reserved for one of David's own descendants.
So David's grand vision it's redirected but not completely dismissed. What's the significance of God denying David's request to build the temple, and how does that impact David?
Well, the denial is significant because I think it reinforces this idea that God's timetable and methods, well, they don't always line up with our human expectations, do they? But with this denial, though, comes a promise so profound that I think it eclipses any disappointment David might have felt. God assures David that his lineage will endure forever, an everlasting dynasty. This is the establishment of what we call the Davidic covenant, a promise, well, with extraordinary implications.
It's a moment of incredible weight. Can you unpack the magnitude of this covenant for us, both within the historical context and its theological significance?
Absolutely. In a world where kings and kingdoms rose and fell constantly, this promise was like an anchor. It meant that David's throne, it wouldn't be temporary. It would continue through his heirs with God's blessing woven into the very fabric of their reign. Theologically, it's a concept that, well, it reverberates throughout the Old Testament and into the New Testament too. This promise, it becomes a beacon of hope for the Israelites, a promise of stability and, well, the anticipation of a future king who would embody both strength and righteousness.
It's fascinating how this seemingly personal promise to one man blossoms into something with such far-reaching implications. Chapter 18, well, this one, it feels like we're changing gears a little bit, doesn't it?
Yeah, a bit of a shift.
We go from these divine promises to Well, the battlefield, where we see all of David's military prowess on full display.
Yeah.
It's a chapter punctuated by all these victories against the Philistines, Moabites, and even the Arameans. He's really securing his kingdom's borders, establishing himself as a force to be reckoned with.
What I think is striking isn't just the string of victories, though, but how these victories are actually portrayed.
Yeah.
The narrative, it doesn't revel in the spoils of war, right? It doesn't present David as invincible through like sheer human might. Instead, there's this consistent emphasis on, well, on God's role in these triumphs.
Almost as if the writer is really wants to make sure we don't view these as just human achievements.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Take, for example, the capture of those golden shields from the Aramean king. Like the text tells us that David dedicated them to God. And this act of offering the spoils of war, it speaks volumes about how David understands where true victory really, really originates.
Yeah.
It's an acknowledgement of God's sovereignty, a way of saying that these victories, well, they aren't his own doing, but a testament to, well, divine favor.
This really resonates with that image of David we saw earlier, a man who, even despite all of his successes and growing power, remains really aware of his place, his role within, well, a larger divine order. He's a king for sure, but he's also a servant.
And that's a really, really crucial point. This chapter, it concludes with a glimpse into David's administration, and it really highlights how efficient it was. And importantly, its commitment to justice. Even as he reigns over this, powerful kingdom, there's this underlying current of recognizing a higher authority.
So I guess as we resurface from this deep dive into the life of King David, what are some of the, maybe the enduring themes? The ripples that extend beyond the pages of First Chronicles. We've encountered God's faithfulness, the weight of a promise that echoes throughout history. And I feel like we got a glimpse into the heart of a leader who embodies both strength and humility.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? We witnessed the joy and exhilaration of receiving those divine promises, but also the weight of responsibility that comes with them, right? How do you think David balanced those two seemingly different aspects, the triumphs and the burdens? How do you think he reconciled that as he navigated, the complexities of leadership and faith?
Welcome to Charlie and Mia's podcast. We're embarking on an exciting journey to read through the entire Bible in just 1 year. Every day, we dive into Scripture, exploring its meanings and how it applies to our lives today. We invite you to join us on this incredible adventure of learning and discovery. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you never miss an episode.